Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Vallad, and welcome to today's webinar, Learn One New Thing, Snagit Effects. I am an instructional designer and master trainer here at TechSmith, and it's my pleasure to bring you today's webinar. Now, if you're new to the Learn One New Thing series, here's what it is. We conduct lots of hour-long webinars where we cover lots of aspects and workflows for all of our products, Snagit, Camtasia, Audiate, and more. But a lot of times people ask us, well, I just want to learn about this thing. Well, that's where this series derived from. It's from feedback from you fine folks about what you'd like to learn. So today we're going to talk all about a classic part of the Snagit editor and often overlooked, but easily something you can use on any number of your captures. That's the effects. So before we get into that, let's go through a few housekeeping items. Number one, the first question, the most often asked question is, hey, Jason, is this being recorded? Yep. Today's session is absolutely being recorded, and you will get a link to that recording sometime in the next 24 hours after the completion of today's session. You can watch it as many times as you want, share it with friends and colleagues, and basically have it as a reference point. Now, if you're kind of waiting and you don't like waiting, you can go to techsmith.com. Go up to the top where it says support and choose webinars, which will take you to our upcoming webinars page where you can sign up for lots of upcoming sessions, including, filtering out the learn one new things or the getting started. But there is a button right here that says looking for previous webinars. If you click on that, you can now see all of our recorded webinars, including even Tuesdays that I did about images from templates. So if you're antsy and you want to get yourself up and running with the recording, it'll probably be up this afternoon. Just wanted to put that out there. All right, next thing we want to talk about is this. We have a series of questions that we love to answer for people, and I have a group of dedicated TechSmithies helping me out. And that includes Meredith and Nick, Sage, and Tracy. They're here to help you out in the Q&A. So the Q&A is open at the bottom. If you have a question you hope to get answered or at least looked at, put it in the Q&A. If you put things in the chat, which is also open, we want to definitely have conversations with you. Just make sure you choose chat with everyone. But make sure you limit all your questions to the Q&A as much as possible so that we can track those and answer them to the best of our ability. We can't promise to get to all of them, but we do our best. And then our team also sends it over to me if it makes the most sense to share with all of you. Now, real quick, before I go to the next slide, I know time is valuable. So if you have to leave this webinar or when you have to leave this webinar at the end, you are going to get presented with a quick 1-minute 4-question survey. And I really appreciate you taking the time to fill that out because those surveys is how we derive whether or not we've done a good job, if this was the right webinar for you, or ideas that you might have for future webinars. In fact, this entire Learn One New Thing series came out of those responses in that survey. We also have the fully transcribed capabilities turned on here in the Zoom webinar interface, which means if you find it helpful to have captions turned on, the closed caption button is at the bottom of your screen. Zoom will do a live transcription as we speak, and it does a pretty good job doing that live. So if you would find that helpful and useful, please go ahead and click on that button. All right. These Learn One New Thing sessions are 30 minutes or less, and they're always or less. Always. Like always. But we will make sure we don't leave any questions hanging to the best of our ability. Let's get into Snagit. So I have an image sitting here in my Snagit editor. We experienced here in Michigan, where TechSmith is located and where I'm located, a pretty significant weather, like a lot of the rest of the Midwestern part of our country over the last couple of days. And I took a snag image of the projections to share with my family and friends so they knew kind of what to expect. So we're going to use this image today to talk about the effects tools inside of Snagit. Starting with, where's the effects tool? Well, the effects are down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the Snagit editor. By default, properties are turned on. Well, what does that mean? That means if I select any of the tools, like let's say the arrow tool, the properties tab is open so that you can manipulate and make customized changes to your capture type based on the tool you selected. So this is where you would change your color of your arrow, maybe its width, its opacity, the different heads, or if I was in, let's say, the shape tool, I can manipulate that, or if I was in the callout. All of these things are turned on by default because the properties panel is turned on. To toggle on the effects tools, you just come down here to the bottom, and instead of properties, you'll choose effects. And when you do, it opens up two things. It opens up a quick effects at the top that has the ability for you to choose some edges and some perspectives, but it also opens up a bunch of other effects. Now, these effects are, how did we describe it, Nick? We described these are classic. These have been part of Snagit for a long time. And they still do a really great job for what they're built for. But if you find yourself wanting them to do more, use them as much as you possibly can. And that kind of generates a need for us to talk about them and make sure that they're meeting all of your needs for your modern capture and annotation customized image needs. So let's start with the first one, border. This is the most basic functionality of an image you could have. And why is a border helpful? Well, when you toggle it on, you'll get a quick preview on your image of what the border would be if you applied it. So in this case, it gives you the entirety of the color wheel. So if you have a particular color, if you have a hex code for a color, an RGB code, if you want to just play with the color wheel, you can do that as well. Or if you're like me and you're not a designer, you tend to lean on this, the eyedropper tool, which allows you to click on it and then choose another color on your screen. So let's say I want to have the border the same as this red for this moderate activity here on the map. I can click on that. It changes the border to that color. And then I can apply a width change so I can have it more defined however I want. Now, this is just a preview of it. It's showing what it would look like if I were to hit the apply button to add the border. Once you hit apply to the border effect or any of our effects, it adds it to your image and then it flattens it. And what a flattened image means is any changes you've made to it are now baked in or burnt in as part of that image. The only way to take it off is to either do an undo, which can be done with your standard Command or Control Z, or we do have the undo button sitting up here by default in the toolbar at the top of the screen. So you can change the different colors, change the borders to see what it'll look like, and then you can apply it or not apply it at this time. So if I don't hit apply, if I either hit cancel or click off of it, the image goes back to its starting position, but it'll show me what it would look like if I were to bake in that border. Why do people use borders? Well, here at TechSmith, we use them a lot because we take a lot of UI or user interface images of the insides of our product, and we put them on white backgrounds. If it's a white capture on a white background, the border helps to kind of define it and lets it pop out of your screen a little bit. So I did a quick poll, actually. Scott, it's funny you asked, what's the Snagit team's all-time go-to effect? This is where I'll ask our own team, Nick and Meredith, who are on the Snagit team, can let us know in theirs as well. I asked my team on the customer education team, by far, border is the #1 use case because it's simple. It's an easy way to add quick polish and define those areas of your image. So that's the border effect.
Yeah,
another
I totally
effect
cheated when I answered one, JB. Yeah. I answered 3. I utilized the quick effects and I saved it. I saved my own and I used border, shadow, and torn effect, edges effect. Just gives that pop, helps things like
there you go.
Above.
Yeah, Nick is all about visual communication. In his communication, he is our resident GIF guy, our Slack emoji guy. If you're having a conversation in any written form with Nick, be rest assured he doesn't like to type stuff out. It's easier to send an image, and that's where this shines. So thanks for sharing that, Nick. Appreciate that. So the next one, edges. So these are something that are synonymous with Snagit, and that is the torn edge effect is the way I always look at it. And that is when you turn on the edges, you'll see that part of my image has been ripped away, or it looks like it's been torn out of a book. It's pretty obvious when you start changing some of the styles. So right now it's the torn edge where it looks like it was ripped from the pages of a newspaper or a magazine. You can adjust the different styles here. You can adjust which edges they're being applied to. Like right now, it's just the bottom and right-hand side. But if I click like all 4 of these over here, now it looks like it's been pulled out of a singular source where it was ripped from all sides. You can adjust the style of it. You can adjust the size of it. So if I were to go, I don't know, let's try the sawtooth one here. Right now, the sawtooth is sitting at a 25, I think that's teeth per inch or something like that. No, it's the inverse of that. It's kind of like needles. But you can control the way it looks based on your desired outcome. You can also add a border from within here. I typically don't. If I'm using a torn edge, I'm just staying with the torn edge itself. You can also add a shadow. Once again, it's personal preference. I'm team no shadow. I typically don't put shadows unless it really serves the purpose of the image to make it stand out and pop. Once you've applied any of these, you can add them to your quick effects up here at the top, or you can apply any of the other ones that are sitting up here just to get a sense of what they might look like when you apply them. So let's go ahead and undo those here, back to our original image, and move on to the next one. So this one actually, surprisingly, capture info. This is one of those things that people who need it didn't necessarily know they had access to it. Watch this. As soon as I click on capture info, it's going to add a little group down here that shows some information about that particular capture. It shows what application was being used. So in this case, I was using TweetDeck for Twitter because it was the National Weather Service out of Grand Rapids here in Michigan. It shows the application version of the machine I was running, which is I'm running Windows 10 Enterprise. It shows the date and time I captured and the operating system, as well as the application version of the web page that it happened to be pulled from. So you can toggle on these as much as you want or as much as you need, and you can also add customized text. So if I wanted to add, I don't know, my name to it, that kind of tags it as my capture, I can do that as well. And I can change the color and the font and the size and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people use the capture info to kind of create a iterative capture state. Like, this is what it looked like at this time in this browser. This is what it looked like at this time in this browser. With a simple click of your button, with the capture info button, you can grab that information right on your capture after you've taken it. Funny thing is, or not funny thing, good thing to know is that capture info also coincides with what's in your library. So if you have a capture state in your library and you were looking for something from February of 2023, those pieces will match up. I got to take a quick drink here, and I'm going to ask and see if the team, was there any questions that came in so far to our Q&A section? I know Scott had asked what was the Snagit's all-time go-to effect. Still tends to be the border.
Yeah, that was definitely the funnest one so far. Not that I'm judging, but a lot of flavor in that. Some other questions we had just about controlling granularity, which you've been doing a good job at showing us, JV, with being able to adjust the size. And another tip I just talked about was, if you like the rip effect and you find you use it regularly, then start planning your captures around that. Maybe take your capture a little bit bigger than you want, knowing you're going to be, ripping on certain sides. So when you do that rip effect, it doesn't eat into your end image that you want to really shine.
Good point. Yeah, so that's something to be considerate of. Like, when you add an edge effect, it will take away some of your image. So if content in your image that's sensitive to what you're trying to share is along the edges, be aware that the edge effect will take that off. A fun one, a classic throwback effect, is the page curl. When you click on that, it literally adds a curl to the corner of your page. Now you can tell it which corner you want it at and deselect ones that you don't want. And you can say how big of a curl. I don't know. I remember these being a thing, and they also still have a place in your image capture, depending on what kind of message you're trying to convey, or if there's certain brevity that you want to use. A page curl is a fun way of doing that as well. And it's done with a single click. Same with shadows. Now, I already said, personally, I'm team no shadow, but shadows do have their place. You can choose the color of the shadow, the position of the shadow. By default, it always looks like it's in the lower right-hand corner. And if we up the size of the shadow, it actually just shows it's offset, right? So there's a transparency around the outside of this. So if I were to share this image out to, say, a Word document, into an email, send it up to screencast.com, which is what the share link button in the upper right-hand corner does. It gives you that little bit of depth, little bit of spacing around your image to it itself. Effects filters. So the filters are kind of interesting too, right? So if you click on filters, there is a series of options here in the drop-down menu. This image itself that I've got right here, this risk for severe thunderstorms, is a pretty vibrant image, right? Lots of colors, lots of detail going on. Well, if I were to choose the soften option, it's going to take down a little bit of those harsh edges. It's not super obvious here, but I can make adjustments on the slider to say how soft I want an image. Now it kind of looks a little blurry, a little bit not as crisp, if that's what I was looking for. I can do the opposite of it and sharpen an image and really tighten up those defining features of it. There are other ones that I think are pretty helpful, like the grayscale one. If I was going to print this off and I didn't want to use all my color ink, grayscale is helpful. It's not as helpful in this particular map because it doesn't give me enough differentiation between those really dangerous areas of the map, but it is an option. There is also the monochrome capability. which is going to be black and white. And then there's the inverting colors, where it's going to take the existing colors and go to the opposite side of the color wheel and give you those options as well. And remember, unless I hit apply, I can simply hit cancel. It's going to take me back to that original image as well. We also have color replacement, or excuse me, color adjustment. So color adjustments are pretty standard sliders of everything from brightness to contrast to hue, saturation, and the gamma range. The hue one I think I find to be the most helpful because it really makes a gigantic change. It'll also correspond with the colors on the same image. So when I change this area by changing the hue, it does its corresponding menu as well. If I get stuck in a place where I want to go back to that original image, it's really easy to actually now by clicking the Restore Defaults button down here below the sliders, which takes you back to its original state before you started making any adjustments. Next thing under color adjustments is color replacement. So this one is not going to work really great on this image. I'm going to tell you that right now, but we're going to try it regardless. When I open the color replacement, there's a plus button here. And what it's going to do is very simply ask you, what color do you want replaced with what color? So in this case, I'm going to click on the black and I'm going to choose the red color up here in this menu. So I'm going to choose that. And then I'm going to replace the red color with, let's replace it with this teal color blue. And instead of at 0%, I'm going to change it to, oops, color replacement. I'm going to change that to, we'll go 50% tolerance or so. Okay. And when I do that, it's going to swap those out and it's going to do a okay job with this particular image. Like we said, with this one, the color thresholds with these small pieces of text, not the best. So even if we were to say, let's change all of the yellow out with the teal, you can see it does a pretty good job filling it, but there's a lot of detail and granularity to this image. But you can definitely apply the color replacement to the best of your ability in the image you have. I happen to choose a pretty robust image here. There is the Spotlight and Magnify tool. Now I want to show you what happens when you do this. When you click on it, it actually is giving you an indicator that says, hey, you have to make a selection using Snagit's selection tool first. So let's actually do that. Let's go up here to the selection tool, and I'm going to select Southwest Michigan, where I'm located. So for those who are not in the area, TechSmith is up here in the East Lansing area. I'm down here in Kalamazoo. Chicago is right on the other side of the lake. But I've made a selection with the selection tool, this square. And when I do that, I can now open up the Spotlight and Magnify tool, and I can magnify things by zooming in a little bit, which pops open that section. I can dim the rest of the image, which is the spotlight effect, so I can really focus in on just that section. I can then also blur that background if I really draw attention. So as a former educator, I would use this kind of tooling all the time because I'd really want to draw attention to exactly what I'm teaching about and not worry about all the extra things happening around the outside. I can then also add a drop shadow to it. I can change its positioning. But because I've applied this effect, I can then still use the rest of Snagit's annotation tools, adding arrows, text, however I might find it most useful to combine with the Spotlight and Magnify. And I don't have to use them both together. I could use that selection tool and just darken everything and not magnify it, but it's there as an option. So we'll hit cancel to go back to our last one, which now allows us to get to that last effect. And I'm telling you, the effects tools, they're pretty basic, but they do not get enough love, in my opinion, because they're so easy to use. The last one we get, and this is quite often, is some sort of watermark. So when I click on the watermark, right now I've already selected and had loaded a Snagit icon. So the watermark works in two different ways. It works either as an overlay, where it takes the image that you've sourced from your computer, which is actually just found right here, where you would grab the folder icon right here and search for the icon on your computer. The overlay, which is that image on top of your image, which can be adjusted in this position. Right now, it's in the far lower right-hand corner, which is where most watermarks live. Not always, but it's where most of them live. You can reposition it by grabbing this little black square and moving it around. So if I wanted to move it over here a little bit, now that is a watermark that exists in the image. Or you can use it instead of an overlay as an underlay. And this one's not going to look as great, but you'll see the Snagit image is embossed right in there. It looks like it was kind of like a punch tool. Now I have another example sitting on my desktop we're going to grab. It's the actual National Weather Service icon. And we're going to use that. It is scaled really small. So we're going to scale it up to about 88% there. So you'll see if I do an overlay, there's the icon. It's the same one that exists up here in the upper left-hand corner of the image. But if I do it as an underlay, because there's so much more defined in the image, there's a lot more lining around the text, around the cloud, the lightning bolt. It looks pretty good down there in the right-hand corner, but it's embossed. And because it's an underlay, it doesn't affect what's above it. So you can still kind of read what's there. So if you wanted to have a watermark sitting right in the middle of your image, which we could here too, you could do that as well, depending on what the purpose of your image is and how you want it to be shared. You can do that as well. You can also adjust how deep that embossing goes. This is pretty intense. I usually hang in the 30 to 40% range, depending on the image. So you can just kind of see it's there and make it part of the experience as well. So, in a nutshell, that is the entirety of the effects tools over here in the right-hand side of the Snagit editor. So because we still got a few minutes here, what questions do we have from the attendees that they might want to learn more about? I'm going to put in the chat right now a direct link to our tutorial all about these tools. So you can also grab that and read a little bit more in depth about making adjustments. It also references the subtle differences on Snagit for Mac, our Mac product version of this. You can do a little bit more with some tools, a little bit less with others. But let's take a quick peek and see if there's any questions that have come in so far. Oh, you know what? Great. Tracy, you're right. Tracy just said, hey, did we miss perspective? We totally did. I totally skipped over that to go to page scroll. That's my bad. There's another tool we missed, and that is perspective. So perspective.
Thanks for sharing your perspective, Tracy. We appreciate that.
Oh boy. Yeah, that was good. Nicely done. Perspective, exactly as it states. When you open this perspective tool, it allows for different adjustments based on how you want to view the image. So perspective by itself lets you adjust the horizontal and vertical appearance of the image. So if you wanted to add this as sort of a tilt method, well, that's a little bit too much. Let's go back to the, I think the horizontal one looked the best without the vertical. Yeah. Let's go back to here. Allows you to make a little bit different appearances to how the image looks initially. So if we do any of the adjustments here, maybe we want to add some text to the top where it shows it tilted away. So you don't need the entirety of the image, or you don't need to read it in a real detailed way. It needs to be a referenced part of either a help document or part of a presentation. Maybe you sent this over to PowerPoint. You can do that as well. Completely.
Hey, JV, can I make a suggestion?
Please.
All of the things that we just showed you, most of them, you can also do automatically when you're capturing an image as well. On our Snagit capture window, on the image tab, there's an effects section there. And through there, you can customize everything JV's just showed you, and you can take your captures and it will just apply.
Yeah, most often the way I do this, to be honest, and I set presets for this, Nick, is I either have a border set up, or this is where I most often use the capture info, because I don't want to have to think about it later on, especially if I'm sharing it right away, or if I have it automatically dropping into Slack, or I've got it going to a presentation. You can set those up in this as well. And we, in fact, did an entire Learn One New Thing session all about presets. So you can check out that recording as well.
I like to have my polished look I have for my torn out ones, just sending directly to certain emails too. I have a preset that just sends my captures to an email if I know I'm going to be doing it here. Whichever share I like. Yep.
Yeah, any repetitive capture types that are going to need consistency, that is your winner, the presets as well. And I'm pretty sure that I did do a Learn One New Thing on presets right there. It's the second one I did ever. So there you go. In fact, I'll throw that right in the chat. If you're interested, you can go right to that session later on and watch that as well. All right. Let's see. Is there any other questions that have come in so far? Everybody's, yeah. So this is the biggest thing, and I love people saying that's so cool. So it's great. I didn't know about that. That's actually a big goal of mine for the Learn One New Thing series, is exposing different tool sets that you might not have been aware of. Because if you didn't know they were there, you can't utilize them. They're already built into the tool. You might as well take advantage of those if you can. Let's see. A question that came in, Melissa said, if you capture with a preset, can it be changed in the editor if needed? Yeah, it can. So if you capture with a preset, which is sitting right here, I've got a PowerPoint presentation one. Let's just create one where we go, we're going to go create a brand new preset. And if I toggle it on preview and editor, if I have that as a preset already, it'll still go to wherever I shared if I choose a sharing destination, but it'll also open up the editor. But you have to always remember, every capture that you've ever taken is available in your library. So you can always go into your library and grab those previous images. So here's the last 3,713 images that I took with Snagit. They're always available to me. They're sorted and available as well. So even if you've taken it with a preset capture, you can always go in and edit it and share it out a different way a second time.
Just in case Melissa meant, can she edit the settings on her effects? The answer is no. Those are burned in when you capture them, but you can edit, you can just cut out and crop and redo it if you need to. Just to be clear, like if you set, say, JV, if you had your torn effect on your image you just took, and it creates that in Snagit with the torn effect, that torn effect's there. You can add another torn effect on top of it. But once you've captured it with a preset, then it's kind of like burned in there initially. But you can tweak it after the fact if you edit and crop a bit more.
There you go. A question that came in, is version 2023.1.0 the newest version? It is. That is currently the one I'm running as well, 2023.1.0. We just released it a month ago, so it is still the most current. And another good job, Nick. That's what Melissa meant exactly. Thanks. Yvonne asked, do you recommend cleaning out the library occasionally to free up space? I don't, because you never know when you're going to need that. And the space is only limited by your hard drive. So unless you're working with a very small hard drive, with not a lot of us are anymore, that's the only limitation where the library would become a little bit bigger. So, well, folks, we are, Nick, are you on a walking desk? Do you have a treadmill desk right now?
I sure do.
There you go. Yep, he does. Good observation. So wanted to say thanks for being here. Let's go to our final slide here in the presentation, which is basically a thank you. We appreciate you coming to today's session. Like I said, these Learn One New Thing ones are short and sweet. My thanks to Nick for being a part of this as well as Meredith and Sage and Tracy for helping answer your questions. They've already answered almost 50 questions in today's session. Reminder, you will get the recording, but of course, you can look this afternoon. I most likely will have it up on that website this afternoon. And if you fill out that survey for us, thanks so much. And let us know, are there other sessions that you might find real valuable about Snagit or Camtasia or Audiate or any of TechSmith offerings? I'm open to ideas. And please feel free to sign up for future webinars at your leisure. Thanks so much for being a part of today. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.